Hi, I would like to welcome everyone to the Edina School Board 2022 Legislative Platform Meeting. Just a few notes. Following the Capitol's current protocol due to COVID restrictions, we are hosting this meeting today virtually as well. The way that it is structured is that we are doing a presentation and a conversation between the Legislative Action Committee of the Edina Public Schools and our state representatives that represent Edina Public Schools as well. A quick thank you to all the representatives here today that have carved out time of their busy schedule to have this conversation with us. In addition, along with the community, we have other school board members and other elected officials listening in as well. And then for any community members that are out there listening along, I want to thank you so much for joining us. If you have any follow-up questions or feedback, or if you're interested in becoming more involved with the Legislative Action Committee, please email us at legislative.action@edinaschools.org. And if you have any questions for the state representatives, I would encourage you to email them directly with any feedback or questions. This year, the Edina School Board is excited to focus on re-energizing the LAC. And next year, our plan is to continue that rebuilding work and to bring more opportunities for participation with the community. And with that, I want to get started. We're going to first start with introductions. My name is Julie Green. I serve on the Edina School Board, and I am chair of the Legislative Action Committee. And I'm going to pass it along to Director Aram.
Hello, my name is Dan Aram. I am on the Edina School Board as well. My first term in the Edina School Board. I'm very excited to be a part of the LAC and really looking forward to working with everybody on the call and in the community. And next will be Dr. Stanley, I believe.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stacy Stanley, and I am the proud superintendent of Edina Public Schools. Really great to be here with you today.
And I am Jeff Jorgensen. I am the Director of Student Support Services here at Edina Public Schools and one of the administrative designees to the Legislative Committee.
Great, and then we'll pass it along to our representatives. I think you guys can each introduce yourselves. That'd be great.
Thank you for having us. This is State Senator Melissa Lopez-Franzen. I'm a resident of Edina. I have two little boys, 5 and 6, in the Edina school system. So I'm very excited to be here and listen to all of you. Been elected since 2012.
My next?
Heather?
Okay, good. Hi, I'm Heather Edelson. I'm the state representative for Edina. I have been in office now for 3 years, served on education finance, and now I'm on education policy. Happy to be here.
And I am State Representative Steve Elkins. Live in Bloomington. District includes parts of Bloomington, Edina, Minnetonka, and Eden Prairie. Includes the southernmost neighborhoods in Edina as well. And like Representative Edelson, I'm in my I've served 3 years.
Great. Go ahead, Member Aram.
Yes, I just wanted to introduce for the state of the EPS. I wanted to introduce Dr. Stacy Stanley. I'm very excited to work with Dr. Stanley and her administration and her team to kind of partner and collaborate for the community. And in general, there are some great opportunities that the district can have right now, and we're hoping that this committee can work with her and her team and really make a historic impact for our students in the community. Dr. Stanley?
Thanks a lot, Director Aram. I really appreciate that. I first want to start by really thanking Director Green, Director Aram for actually relaunching the Legislative Action Committee. It is such an important prong within the work that we do within education. I'm really grateful for Senator Lopez-Franzen being here, for Representatives Edelson and Elkins being here, because they really are our advocates. They know Edina and represent us at the Capitol better than anyone else can. And of course, I'm grateful for one of our directors, Director Jorgensen, to be here. This is a passion of his in the advocacy, especially within the areas of special education and student support services. And so just really delighted to be here with everyone. So they told me that I just have a few minutes for an update on the state of the district. And I could talk for 25 minutes, but I won't do that. Really, what I'm going to talk about is what I believe many of those who are watching, many of our residents, many of our families are interested in, is to know where we're at with COVID mitigation. And what I want to say is I am really proud to say that we are in a really good place. My team put together a phenomenal COVID surge response plan that has allowed us to stay in person this entire time, and not in person without learning opportunities. Students have been learning in schools. I've been out in their schools. I spent 2.5 hours out at the high school last week, really being able to connect with students as they were preparing, for their finals and things like that. Right now, I'm going to find some wood to knock on before I say this, but right now we are in a good place. We have consistently every day seen staff absences go down. And when I say staff, I'm not just referring to teachers, bus drivers, paraprofessionals, all the roles, our food services, all the roles that really play a significant role in making certain that our students have a really high quality learning day. We've consistently seen those absences track downward. We've consistently seen the absences of our students track downward to the point where today we are at a typical normal absence rate that we would see with students. So that makes me happy as well. That lets me know that our community is becoming well. And we are really working to take care of ourselves, and that our mitigation efforts in the district, such as universal mask wearing, continues to work to not only help our students within the district, but also to really help our community as a whole. The other thing that I would like to talk about a little bit is just our movement toward our work around literacy. We are really excited. We have teachers who are in letters training. We have teachers who have been trained in our district assessment model so that they know exactly how to provide the instructional targeted instruction that our students need to make certain that we are moving along our comprehensive literacy plan. Our Director of Teaching and Learning will be providing an update about the launch of our 612 plan in about a week, but then we'll get a comprehensive update to the community as well on that. And then finally, in December, our board of directors approved our work toward launching a pathway for dual language Spanish immersion school. We have 48 spots, and there were nearly 150 applications for those 48 spots. And so what that tells us is there is significant interest for second language learning, language immersion within our community. And we're just really excited to be able to continue to watch the planning for that to move forward. And we are in the early stages of working with the University of St. Thomas as we begin our efforts to develop what I call a marquee early childhood through 12th grade STEAM program. We have strong middle school STEM programming. We have strong high school STEM programming. We want to make certain that this is comprehensive E12 and that we are known for that all around the state and all around the upper Midwest. So again, I could probably go on for a long time, but I won't do that. Those are just some key pieces that I wanted to share with the community and giving an update about the state of Edina Public Schools.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stanley. That was great. We are going to dive right into the legislative platform and go through the different priorities that the school board approved of these earlier this year. A few things also to note is that as we go through the priorities, these are top issues for the district and for Minnesota, but in no way are they all encompassing. As you as representatives know, nothing ever is, right? But we are hopeful that they do reflect Edina's strong commitment to education and not only in our district, but in the state. And we're hopeful that we can identify some ways that we can align with you all and all the work that you're doing at the Capitol and collaborate going forward. So we are going to get started. So up first is stabilize education funding. Link the basic formula and local optional revenue to inflation to provide a stable and consistent funding stream that allows school boards and administrators to engage in long-range and innovative planning. Allow locally elected school boards to renew existing operating referendum at the same level, and increase English learner funding to reduce the shortfalls in these important programs. And we thought a good way to talk a little bit about this and the impact on Edina is to bring Director Jorgensen and Dr. Stanley in to add anything anecdotally here.
Certainly. So thank you for that. I mean, this platform really aligns clearly with our needs, but so important. We know that the referendum levy dollars really help to support our efforts to do what I say is not only defining excellence, but taking us to the place where we elevate it and we illuminate our excellence within our district. You know, right now we have a cross subsidy for our multilingual or English learners of about $1.1 million. That's what it was last year. And I just actually checked the other day with our coordinator for EL services, because I wondered, as we welcome our new Afghani residents into the district, I wondered the impact. And he actually shared with me that he is going to be on a webinar this afternoon. Right now, we have six students who have joined the district from our new Afghani neighbors. And we know that will only increase. And it wouldn't be surprising because we have the ability to offer an awesome education. To do so, though, we need to be fully funded in order to do that. And so I am in full support of the platform. And I know that Jeff has some things he wants to add as well.
Yes, I would just add to the English language learner conundrum that we have here in Edina is that school districts that have larger populations of ML students actually have a little bit easier time because they hit a threshold at which additional ML funding comes to them. And that affects their compensatory funding, that affects a lot of different federal funding that comes to them as well. Because our population is relatively small here in Edina, we're still required to develop the full continuum of services for our EL learners. And we need to be able to adjust to the levels at which they're being acculturated in their language acquisition and where they're at with their language acquisition. I think one of the things that we just want to point out here is that we understand the different variables that are trying to be balanced out with the EL funding issue. Which is we oftentimes take from one program source, a funding source, and reallocate those funds to EL services. And what we're really asking for is a consideration of actually new dollars being put on the EL formula to be able to address these concerns when we don't have that critical number, critical percentage in our district to be able to serve these populations adequately without going deeply into a cross-subsidy type of a scenario. And so once again, we're asking for that increased funding, but asking for that funding not on the backs of another program in which we may take money from. So it'd be actually new allocation of funding. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you both. Okay, we're going to move on to the next one. We'll go through all the priorities and then we'll allow for responses from the from representatives. Next is strengthen and support special education and intervention programs. Increase special education funding to reduce shortfalls in this important program and fully fund special education to eliminate the cross-subsidy. Increase funding for the ADSYS program and base funding on the number of students eligible in the district. And lastly, create a special student status for students in intermediate school districts requiring an extraordinary level of care and increase state funding for these students. And I'm going to pass this right over. I'm guessing Director Jorgensen will want to respond.
Yes, thank you, Director Green, for passing that on to me. This is one of my passion areas. And so let me just talk just a little bit about these different bullets. Increasing of the special education funding to reduce our shortfalls. We've been after IDEA to obviously fully fund special education since it was established. And we've gotten very little traction on that. And we're hoping potentially with the current administration that we might get a little bit of leverage going on those federal dollars. And so that's definitely something that we want to pinpoint. But the other side of it is that we're trying to also take a look at both short term and long term, and the addition of funds that would sufficiently address the cross subsidy. We've seen this year after year, and we get a little bit of a boost when we reduce our cross subsidy periodically. And then it just continues to grow year after year again, as we just haven't been able to keep up with the cost of living. I know that Governor Walz's budget last year included allocation of some funding towards the cross subsidy to reduce the cross subsidy. I don't know that that's in his budget proposal this year. I think I heard some other things about more or less a refund coming our way, but we would really emphasize a need to address the cross subsidy. And addressing the cross subsidy is actually beneficial for both our special education programming and for our regular education programming. Obviously, as the cross subsidy goes up, the amount of general fund dollars that we're utilizing to pay down the cost of special education is taken away from other efforts that the district might be able to do. So this could be actually a remedy in a lot of different areas. We just talked about EL funding and saying, you know what, we don't have enough district resources to be able to sufficiently meet the needs of our EL population. There's cross subsidy there. But if we were to really address the special education cross subsidy, that might alleviate some of the cross subsidy that we're experiencing. It won't alleviate it; there'll still be just as much of a cross subsidy, but at least there'll be dollars available to allocate in that direction. We're doing a both and. We'd love to have both and here in terms of reduce cross subsidy in special education and reduce the cross subsidy in our EL programming as well. But we understand that this is a tough one. But this benefits general education. It benefits the continuum of services. If we can reduce that special education cross subsidy and build in a formulary where we're keeping up with that cost of living increase that we're experiencing on a yearly basis. The second bullet is that we made wonderful progress last year, and we want to thank you as legislators last year for making some movement in the ADSYS program by allowing special education students in certain circumstances to access ADSYS funding. So thank you very much for the services, or for allowing that to take place. We did get movement on that, but now we're talking about something that has been a concern for a very long period of time within our state as well, which is every school district in the state of Minnesota is capped on the amount of funding that they get or that they're able to apply towards ADSYS funding. And that's regardless of the size of the district. It is capped at the same number. So literally you can have a school district of 1,200 students accessing exactly the same amount of ADSYS dollars, our alternative delivery of specialized instructional service dollars, as is an Edina, as is Minneapolis, as is a St. Paul. And so there's really not any type of an adjustable platform in ADSYS right now. And I understand that's to cap the amount of dollars that are there so that we can actually calculate out how much that costs. But ADSYS has been probably one of the most effective programs run by the Minnesota Department of Education on reducing the number of students coming into special education programming. And we would want to invest more in ADSYS to support the wonderful intervention efforts that are taking place that are actually helping us to control the overall special education numbers. So we'd like to have consideration of an increase that would allow school districts of larger sizes to actually have a formulary where that number would actually increase. So consideration of that. And then finally, the special student status for students that are attending the intermediate districts. This is just part of our tuition billing formula that we don't think sufficiently really addresses our student needs sometimes. And every school district has these. They have students that are considered to be of such a need level that we really do need to move heaven and earth to serve our students. They can be upwards of $100,000 a year in terms of their overall service. And what we'd ask for is consideration of special status for those students, a lot like we have for students that are placed out of state. That's off the tuition formula. That's something the state identifies as a special student status. And so the reimbursement is coming directly from the state of Minnesota. as opposed to being charged back through the basic tuition formula. So that would be our consideration.
Thank you, Jeff. Dr. Stanley, would you like to add anything before we move on?
I certainly echo everything that Jeff shared. And I would say when it comes to our students who receive special education supports, I just cannot stress more that we know the impact of the pandemic has been significant for them. And so the work that we are doing with the IEP support plans to really work to make certain that we are bringing students back up to the academic levels that we wanted them to be is important. And that does require the additional funding. I would also say that for ADSIS, that is critical for our literacy plan. ADSIS programming is there to target students and get their reading skills up to level before they would be identified as needing special education supports. And so that is our primary and ultimate goal. And so that is why it is critical. And then finally, I don't know how many people know about the intermediate school districts, but we work with Intermediate School District 287, which is a school district that works in collaboration with districts around and within the West Metro area, that they are able to provide much more comprehensive special education services than we are able to provide right here within our district. And as Jeff shared, sometimes those comprehensive services can be upwards of $100,000 per student, and that funding comes from our general fund as opposed to us receiving additional funding from the state.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it along to Member Aram.
Yes, our third priority is going to be ensuring safe and modern school facilities. The first part of this would be increasing the Safe Schools levy and state aid to allow school districts and intermediate school districts to hire additional support staff and address mental health needs of students. And the second portion of it is removing the per pupil limit and expand allowable uses for the long-term facilities revenue to allow school districts and intermediate school districts to enhance safety through security modifications, remodeling, and additions to existing buildings. Dr. Stanley or Director Jorgensen, would you have any comments on either one of those two bullets?
I can chime in here, and then Jeff, I know that you'll have some things to follow up on. You know, we are really proud of what we've done in the Edina Public Schools to make certain that we have forced entries. So all of our vestibules are secured. We are certainly adding things like our video cameras. We have the most comprehensive walkie-talkie system that connects each and every one of our schools together. I can hear anything that is happening on my walkie right here in my office, any calls that are being made in any of our schools. And so that is fantastic. We know that we've put some security measures in place to really ultimately work to prevent with intruders. And we know that any technology that we have in our schools, the moment it was probably outdated before we got the resources to even install them in our schools, because technology is on a rapid cycle turnaround. And so we definitely want to make certain that we have the funding that we need to continue to update. It isn't a one and done for certain with those resources, either the hardware or the software. And then again, I know so many people hear me say this when I'm out speaking. The impact of the pandemic on our students has been strong. I actually have a student representative leadership team at our high school and both of our middle schools. And when I went out and started working with them to figure out what their platform was that they wanted to work on, mental health was the number one thing that came across in our middle schools and at our high school level. And so we know that investment is going to make a difference, because looking at the whole child is really very important. I can't say enough about long-term facilities. Again, we're very fortunate that Eric Hamilton, John Tope had us in the position where we were already updating our HVAC. And before you know it, we are going to need additional updates in 5 to 10 years. And so we definitely need those funds to make certain that our schools are up to date.
And if I could just throw my voice in on the increase of the Safe School Levy, we consistently, and I mean very consistently, and I think Edina does this very well, is that we braid our funding sources together out of various areas to ensure that we are able to put together a sustainable stream of funding for the services that we have. We've done this very well, I think, in our mental health efforts. But as you know, as the adage goes, how many social workers do you need? The answer is always one more, just simply because as soon as we get a mental health provider in, we have needs that exceed the provider that is able to provide those services. And although we're trying to develop that continuum where we're at tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, so that we're increasing the capacity of our staff, I think we've obviously seen over the past 2 years a disintegration in our students' overall level of mental health capacity or functioning, and also our teachers and related service staff. So what we're looking for in the ask for the Safe School Levy is that, once again, this is more of an equitable measure for school districts to apply in order to get to a sustainable level of funding to help support mental health professionals or mental health practitioners within our system. Again, I want to thank the legislature for moving forward on things that were related to school-based mental health and the grant opportunities that came out. But once again, because of our demographic here in Edina Public Schools, we're not eligible for a lot of those types of resources. Having access to those types of resources not within our ability to even apply for. But an increase of the Safe Schools Levy would allow really a uniform increase to school districts across the state that would allow us to levy our taxpayers to help provide that sustainable funding for our mental health efforts within the school district. So thank you.
Our next slide is going to be, our next topic would be increasing and diversifying the teacher workforce. This would be involving removing the barriers and providing incentives to address the shortage of substitute teachers, school bus drivers, paraprofessionals, and other staff. The next part of it would be continue to expand the programs and incentives to attract, develop, retain teachers of color. And lastly, maintain multiple pathways to licensure in the tiered licensing system. I'll pass that to Dr. Stanley and Director Jorgensen.
All right. So although I've been in education for more than 2 decades, many individuals don't know that my first career was occupational therapy. And I actually came into education in the 1990s through a Grow Your Own program. And so I am a strong advocate of that. Since then, we have received much data related to the benefit of having teachers of color in systems. We know now that if a student who is a student of color has a teacher of color, by the time they're in 3rd grade, it increases their potential for graduation. I can't remember the exact percentage, but I feel like it was like by 66%. Which is incredibly important. And we also know the impact for our students, for our white students, the benefit of having individuals working with them that bring in multiple perspectives. So we know that it is a win-win. We are really grateful to the state where they have created the Grow Your Own grants, and they actually invested more into those grants, and we'll be applying for the next cycle. We applied for the last cycle. We didn't make it, but we will apply for this next cycle, and I'm confident that we'll be able to be funded for that. It would be wonderful to start a Grow Your Own program, both for the staff that we have within our district, as well as for students, where they could earn some college credit, take some courses, and create that pathway for our students at the high school. And then certainly, we know the economy with with jobs and with hiring. I mean, it is really tough out there, no matter where you're at. I was talking to a gentleman who owns several retail stores the other day, and he just spoke to how difficult it is to actually bring on the number of members into his workforce that he needs to be effective. And so any of the barriers that are put in place, along with some incentives to get our bus drivers in, especially our paraprofessionals, that would be fantastic.
The only thing that I would like to add here is just a great big thank you and an example of a program that is working so well beyond the grow your own models that are out there right now. But the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development moving forward, utilizing some of those ARP funds that they receive to pay for the tuition of individuals to go through the health assistant training, or the certified nursing assistant training, is something that we've had some of our paraprofessionals look into and actually access. The program, as soon as it became open, or as soon as it opened at Hennepin County Technical College, was filled within just a few days. So there are people looking for opportunity to increase their ability to serve. And this was a very simple thing to do, but removing that tuition barrier for individuals to be able to access a service like that can give them a brighter future in terms of accessing school districts or accessing our community in large in an area of great need, right? So healthcare has an enormous need right now, and we're experiencing that within the public education system as well. Our nursing services and health services have been challenging, and especially in those areas where students require some level of nursing care on a one-to-one basis. There wasn't enough nurses to go around. There is still not enough nurses to go around, and so we need to build our capacity to serve. Deed did a wonderful thing in terms of leveraging those dollars in a way that's going to make an immediate impact to our economy and to a needed area of service. If we can envision a way to do that same type of thing for our educators, to be able to have that fast track and the ability to remove that barrier of tuition, we can really make a significant change in the way our operations are being challenged right now. Thank you.
So based on that, we kind of wanted to open up a little bit now to the legislators to see if they had some comment or feedback. Obviously we had our 4 platform pieces. We could certainly work through those as we go, if that's an easy way to do it, or if there's certain ones that the legislators feel that they wanted to address right away. Please feel free to comment on one of those. Otherwise, I can just say that we can work backwards and kind of go on each one, and you can each take a chance and respond. Do you have a preference?
I to start, unless Senator Franzen, you want to start.
You can go ahead, or we can toss a coin, just like the
popcorn.
Okay, I'm just gonna go. I thank you so much for all of these issues. There's honestly great ones. We just had a meeting at Hopkins Legislative Action Committee as well, and you guys are doing a great job. I mean, for just restarting, watch out, Hopkins. So the issues are really good ones, and they're definitely ones, as sitting on education policy, that I've been hearing a lot about. So the stabilizing, I think, just generally what you're going to really see as a priority this session is for sure funding. Obviously, you've heard that we have a $7.8 billion surplus. I think we are going to try to look at some of those, specifically the EL funding. For the state, I think it's 116 million in total in terms of the deficit. So definitely that will be a top priority. I know that workforce and trying to incentivize making sure that we have teachers and staff and bus drivers and all that to make sure that we keep kids in school is incredibly important. So that is definitely something we're looking at. The IEP support plan bill with the extra work, I just want to note that was my bill. And I want to thank you all. I know that has for teachers and for our special education staff, that has been a heavy lift. And I just want to thank you. I know families with children that have IEPs, including myself, are incredibly grateful to really get that second look back. And you've been doing great work. So thank you for that. Just another one to touch on, definitely this the special status for the intermediate school districts. I have a question with that one. Do you know who's carrying that bill? Is that been introduced? Because this is the first I'm hearing of that one.
So that's not been carried in the past, and so that's something that may actually require us to take a look at authoring something. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, I think that's great, and Jeff, I would love to chat with you offline about that. I think that's a great idea. And I think that this would be a great year to bring that bill. So you and I have worked on policy for sure together. Just looking at, hold on, my other area. Let's see, increase school levy. That's been talked about. I know that there's bills that are moving on that. And then in terms of the increase in diversity in terms of our workforce, last year we made a historic investment of $30 million in ensuring that we retain and recruit teachers of color. I know that we will be looking at hopefully that investment has gone out. Hopefully we are seeing increases. Unfortunately, with the pandemic continuing, we are still struggling. And I think teachers, students, staff are under a great deal of stress, as you all know. I think that's the issues that I wanted to cover. The only other thing I just want to say is I'll be carrying the innovation our instructional hours bill, which allows some flexibility in terms of the instructional hours that we CC. That will be a pretty big bill. We had brought that last year, but this would allow some flexibility. I know Superintendent Stanley, you've talked about these great micro
credentials, micro credentialing, and apprenticeships and internships.
And I think that is a great idea. I love that. And I called you right after I heard about that. I think the instructional hour seat time flexibility on some of these things would really provide some great opportunity for you in that work. So, and then we will also be having, I authored the letters, reading literacy, and we got a $3 million appropriation for that. We will be seeking Roger Chamberlain. I have talked to him. It looks like we're going to try for more on that, because I don't know that Edina has ever received any of the letters funding. No, I don't think so. And so anyways, that's all I've got. Thank you, guys.
In the interest of time, I'll try not to repeat myself, but I do want to tackle a few of the items that I've changed my view over time. So previous to Dr. Stanley being our superintendent, we're so excited to have her on board and bringing fresh ideas and fresh perspective to our district. I was elected in 2012, like I mentioned earlier, and at first I was very adamant about, the legislators' role in the legislature to fund appropriately all these areas, especially education, when it's up to our Constitution and our role in government to adequately fund education. And as you all know, and you're experts in this field, we haven't done a very good job at it. So the issue of indexing to inflation, I've always been hesitant because I've always thought it was our role to do the right thing and fund education adequately, appropriately, and into the future. I've shifted to say, I'm tired of talking about inflation. And right now everyone's dealing with inflation. And I think right now we understand that better than ever. So the fact that we could put it in an inflation link to the formula is something that I'm more open to, particularly when we see that there is so much need, especially after these last few years, that the schools, starting from custodians, teachers, bus drivers, school services, nurses, counselors, interns, paraprofessionals, volunteers, parents, it's been all hands on deck. So we're not going to get out of this pandemic stronger for our state economy if we don't fund our education and its foundation. So I'm excited about all the innovation that you're talking about, whether it's additional bilingual programs or STEAM. I'm very excited about those too, especially with my little ones coming into the school system, but also because I think it's the right thing for our state, and how do we support that? So I've shifted there. I've shifted also on the referendum, because we have to do and govern smartly and more efficiently. So you have my support when it comes to those things. And obviously when it comes to having supports for special education and safe and secure schools and teacher workforce. I don't serve on education committees at this point. I used to. I'm on the finance committee. So you can count on my support where it comes to any single bill dealing with funding for education, and fully funding education to the extent that we can leverage some of that surplus. Again, in that surplus, we don't include the inflationary factor. So it's less than 7.8 billion. It's closer to 6, but still, we need to deal with the one-time ability that we have as a state to support education and really standing up the morale of our workers across our state, and starting with education. I think it's fundamental. And lastly, the diversification of our workplace at every level in schools, it's no different. So we've done some newer funding. We haven't seen the outcomes because it's pretty new, but certainly we know that that's going to make a difference. And to the extent that we could talk again about workforce, how can we support, just like it was mentioned, the CNA program for nursing. It was done in record-breaking time. It was done in record-breaking funding. And we have people on the ground that are changing professions because they've been exposed to this opportunity. So it's exciting to know that there's ways that we can retrain, reskill, and retain people in our workplaces. So I'll cede my time to Representative Elkins, who I know had some audio problems, but is back online. And
I'm
thank
back.
you for everything you have done.
Yeah, thank you. I got to hear all of Senator Franzen's discussion, so I'll build on that a little bit. So as she mentioned, we have a projected $7.7 billion budget surplus right now. But because of a decision that the legislature made way before any of our time, that projection includes inflation in revenue, but not in costs. And so when as part of that $7.7 billion footnote, Representative Lincheski years ago at least got a provision in the law that allows the Minnesota management budget to put a little asterisk with a footnote on it with a rough estimate of what inflation would be if it were included. And in the latest budget forecast, that's $1.1 billion. So again, as Senator Franzen said, the true surplus is closer to $6 billion than $7. And but given that we have this historically large surplus, I think this is an ample time or right time to start taking that bull by the horns. And so I am developing a general bill as a member of the State Government Finance Committee in the House to include a more detailed estimate of inflation on the cost side into those budget projections. And so I'm started working already with House Research, with Britta Rattan in Minnesota Management and Budget, with the state economist, Laura Columbakitis, to develop a bill that would appropriately, and in a fairly detailed fashion, build inflation into the state's budget projections. And as you guys know, the state's largest, single general fund budget item is K-12 education, and the biggest part of that is, of course, the salaries and benefits for teachers and other employees of school district. The last number I heard is that typically employee costs are about 80% or more of the typical school district's budget. So I'm going to be working to make sure that inflation forecast, effectively reflects an assumption that the wages and salaries for teachers in particular are going to go up in parallel with the wages and salaries of other similarly well-educated employees in the workforce. So that we have a baseline that grows, assumes that teachers will continue to be fairly compensated into the future. And like I said, I've just started working on this project right now. We'll also be reaching out to the Minnesota Center on Fiscal Excellence, which is the state's kind of leading, best respected tax policy advocacy group. So I'll keep you posted on what I'm doing there. But I very, very strongly support all of the policies that you've laid out today, especially those related to fiscal stability.
Thank you. Is there any other comments that we had from the group at all?
Dr. Stanley, do you have, or Director Jorgensen, do you have any feedback or questions that you have?
I was just going to say I really, truly appreciate just the thoughtful process that you're putting toward the supports. Senator Franzen, I appreciate just your willingness to be upfront in the journey that you've gone through to move in that direction. And the pandemic and the impact of the pandemic has certainly opened our eyes in so many different ways to see the impact for students across socioeconomic status, across their linguistic abilities, to be able to see that when we have the funding, that our students deserve, quite honestly, in order to serve them, we can do better. And so we truly appreciate having the three of you out there in our corner advocating for us.
Well, and I'll just close by saying a big thank you to all of you again. I wanted to say Legislative Action Committee. So an example of action is Heather and I have been texting already about setting up a time to talk about getting a bill sponsored to address one of the topics on our list. So once again, just thank you for not just the listening to our concerns, but also being able to remark back and looking to ways that you can support that platform. So thank you all so very much.
Thank you for those comments. I echo what Dr. Stanley and Director Jorgensen said. Thank you guys so much for your time. The only question that I have as we wrap up here is with this virtual format, I know, what is the best way that you want to hear from not just the Edina School Board Legislative Action Committee, but also stakeholders? What do you recommend?
I can start. I just give my cell phone out, 612-968-4566. I'll get to you. Be patient. But again, 612-968-4566. I got some regular folks that want to chime in on every subject, and I'm more than happy to hear you. But if I can be of help, I certainly want to prioritize that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not giving you myself. No, just kidding. Just kidding. I'll give myself one too. I mean, you kind of have to with Melissa doing this now. 651-785-8696. And I put my email in the chat. Can everybody watching see?
No, but you know what we will do, post from this meeting, we will post it on the legislative action page of the website so that everyone has access and can see the priorities and actually a recording of this, a link to the YouTube channel. So, which would be great.
Yeah, and I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. I'm otherwise retired, and so I'm really good about answering my email. I prefer that method to the cell phone, but you guys know how to reach me.
Excellent. Great. Well, just on behalf of this, the Edina School Board and this Legislative Action Committee, I just want to thank you again so much for taking the time to listen and have this conversation. It's great. And I thank you ahead of time for the work that's to come in this session, because I know that it's a lot of hours, it's a lot of effort, and we know that education is at the front of your mind. So we really appreciate that. And for anyone who's listening out there, if you have any thoughts or you want to join our efforts, please email us at legislative.action@edinaschools.org. And I just want to thank you again. So this is a wrap. So
thank you, everyone.
Won't go out on me again.
Stay safe.